What's up, everybody? It's your boy Chaz Pearson, and this is the Outlet Forum with my esteemed co-host Chris Camella. What up, Chris?
What up, Chaz? Just a bit outside. He tried to corner and miss. R.I.P. to the great Bob Euchre. Had to throw that in
You
there.
R.I.P. to the great Bob Euchre. Man, it's been a couple weeks since we've been on, and there's been so much going on. Shout out to everybody that's made it through the California fires. Obviously, those are still ravaging and going through the communities. So anybody that's affected, like maybe like I was last week, shout out to you guys. But Chris, we got to start off first with we got some NBA topics to talk about. Jimmy Butler versus Pat Riley. The saga continues. Will the Lakers make a trade because AD is out another week? Houston is going up right now. They got one of the best records in the league and in the West. And the Super Bowl is set. Chiefs Eagles. We'll get into a little bit of that. But first, we have to start off tonight, Chris, with the Kings. The Kings are just going to do what they do, and the Sacramento Kings are always going to be that franchise that just can't get right. And even though they're trying to get right, they keep peeling back layers, and it turns out they're not as good as they thought they were. But I'll say my opinion after you. I'll give you the floor first, Chris. What do you make of De'Aaron Fox reportedly not only being open to being traded, but the Kings open to trading him? Obviously, there is more than I think a year left on his deal, so they're in that part where they got to figure out if they want to trade him, get something back for him, or pay him. Clearly, the relationship isn't good enough to where they want to pay him, or he wants to accept whatever they have to give him. Reportedly, so
Right.
the infamous Rich Paul is his agency or his agent, I should say, and it sounds like De'Aaron Fox either wants to land in San Antonio, Houston, Miami. These are various teams that we're hearing reportedly. Chris, what do you make of not only De'Aaron Fox possibly leaving, but where is he possibly going to land, you think?
Well, first of all, I'm glad everything is okay with you, partner.
Oh,
You obviously you have been most affected by both of these fires. I know you lost power a couple weeks ago when it was at the peak of it, and then last week it was the Hughes fire that you actually had to evacuate your home and everything. Not to get into too many details, but it was definitely a rough time. And but I'm glad you're back. You're situated, no damage, and just
oh,
thank the good Lord.
damage. God's
Yeah,
good. Yeah, thank the good Lord.
absolutely. So, to anyone being affected out there, or to any of your loved ones being affected, thoughts and prayers are with them, and hopefully everybody is doing okay and getting through this one day at a time.
No
But
doubt.
it is good. It is good to be back out on here with you, my friend. Going back to De'Aaron Fox, yeah, this story. We've been hearing some rumblings about it, but the Kings had been winning. So, winning cures all, Chaz. As we know, shout out to Doug Christie, longtime Sacramento King, doing an outstanding job as the interim. He's really kind of righted the ship. And then all of a sudden, boom, this story comes out yesterday, and he essentially wants out, I think. I think too much has happened, and this organization now is at a kind of a crossroads. Now, they don't need to trade him next week. They don't. They could see this process through the summer and
It
wait
would
for a
be the
better
wise thing to
opportunity.
do.
Right. But at the same point in time, there is a team that is a preferred destination, and it's not LA, nor is it Miami. It's the
Of
San
course not.
Antonio Spurs. And for me, if I am RC Buford, their president of basketball operations, I would strike a deal next week. You've got the picks, you've got the young assets, you've got the contracts, and you are not in a serious position to contend this year. So why not go after De'Aaron Fox? You need a point guard for the future. Chris Paul was always known as a stopgap. And you got Devin Vassell, you've got Stephen Castle, you've got Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, you've got multiple first round picks, a boatload of second round picks, pick swaps. You could put together an attractive package without necessarily mortgaging the farm.
Yeah.
San Antonio makes the most sense, and it shows Wembenyama we are serious about winning. Because let's be honest, Chaz, San Antonio doesn't often dip their toes in the big free agent waters. Their last big free agent was LaMarcus Aldridge almost 10 years ago. That's who they got. and they've never
Spurring
really
the
made.
spurring the Lakers. Yep, back in
Yeah,
2014, I
exactly.
think.
And if you go back even more, they haven't ever really done a blockbuster trade, right? They've never really gotten that all-star piece via a trade. Everything has always been homegrown with the Spurs because they are a small market, but they've always been one of the best small market teams. I think this is the chance for the Spurs to strike because let me tell you this, if you don't strike now, then you give other teams like the Lakers or Miami or Minnesota or whoever else comes out of the woodwork looking for an all-star caliber point guard in
So
Fox, who's still in his prime, to now make a more competitive offer and put you out on the back burner. So I think the Spurs got to strike when the iron's hot.
So here's the thing. I don't think it's all on the Spurs. I don't think they have to go all in on De'Aaron Fox if that's not the player that they identify as their guy. So here's the thing. This is why the Lakers, and we'll get into them, and the Heat and the Suns and all these other teams, this is why you want to save up the assets because there's always a player every season, whether the in season or off season. We say it every year that becomes available that nobody really had on their radar to become available. I didn't really think that De'Aaron Fox was going to become available, but here we are. So
Yep.
I don't think it's solely on the Spurs. I think Houston, and we'll get into them later on in the show, is really the team because they're closer to being there, more so than San Antonio is. And I think De'Aaron Fox probably wants to win rather than, build continually with Wembanyama, but he may still want to go there because word on the street is that not word on the street, but his wife or fiance, I'm not sure which one of the two, believe it's his wife, is from the San Antonio area. So, if that's what's going to make her happy, then, and playing with Victor Wembanyama, obviously the max as well. Because here's the thing,
No state tax in Texas either, by the way.
he has to make all NBA to get the super max. Now he's going to get he's a max player, but he's not super max eligible just yet because he hasn't made all NBA. Um, it would have to be this year, I believe. And I
Which
don't
is no
think with the
guarantees,
season
by
he's
the way.
having, yeah,
Yeah,
with the season that he's having right now, I don't think that he would be there just yet because the guards, especially in the West, or just all NBA, I should say, are pretty tough.
definitely.
So
Yeah,
um, for De'Aaron, I think that ultimately he wants to be with a winner. Um, I'll be. It'd be really interesting if he were to go to Miami some way, somehow. Would if they were to get Jimmy out and get De'Aaron in, and I'm not really too sure about that. But are the teams reportedly on his list that are probably at the top of his list. Everybody is reporting that the Lakers are not on this list, but it would make so much sense for him to be on the Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But I don't know, Chris. It just blows my mind how these players become available, and there's always somebody who can come up and change the trajectory of their franchise
sure.
with certain players, and De'Aaron Fox is one of those players for sure. But
He
I,
is, but at the same point in time, let me just say this: at the same point in time with Fox, is he has not proven he could win at a high level, and he's playing alongside another great big man in Sabonis. So yes, him and Wemby would be dynamic together. It would certainly be good, help the Spurs get on track. Him next to Anthony Davis, along with some of the young pieces with the Lakers, would be amazing, but no guarantees that's going to lead automatically to success either. I just want to keep that in mind.
yeah, well, there's another player who I think that is going to make a big splash. Not like De'Aaron Fox probably would, because De'Aaron Fox still has some growing to do, I think, which he might actually be perfect with Victor Wembanyama, but I think he's probably ready to win now in terms of what his talent says because he's been in the league, what, at least 7 years now. So he's about there now. Um, Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy
Mm,
Butler is continually going head up with Pat Riley. And this last this last time Pat Riley and the Miami Heat, Eric Spoelstra in a huddle at practice decides to tell Jimmy Butler that he's not starting and he's coming off the bench in front of the players. And here's the thing, the Miami Heat definitely have some culpability in all this because of the way that they're deciding to treat and go about. telling Jimmy Butler certain things, dealing with Jimmy Butler. Like in my view, he's being poked and prodded a little bit and provoked, dare I say, into doing some of the things that he's doing and acting the way he's acting. Now, you still got to be a professional. You still have to handle things, but here's his mentality. He wants to give up some bread or some money in order to get some more bread in the long term and in the short term by getting to a team that he thinks is going to value him like Phoenix. I think obviously he has some kind of assurance that he is going to go to Phoenix or somewhere and the bag is waiting on him because why else would he act and behave this way knowing that fines and he's going to recoup some of this money? I mean, look, he makes $50 million a year the last couple of years and 52 next year on the player option, but losing 3, 4, $5 million in the season when you're being suspended 3, 5, 7 games at a time is still a lot of money. So,
It is, yeah.
Chris, Chris, what do you make of the saga, and what do you think ultimately is going to happen? Will Jimmy Butler still don a Miami Heat jersey by next Thursday at noon?
I just think too much has happened at this point. I think they're past the point of no return, to be quite honest with you. And we've talked a lot about Riley's role in this. The one guy we haven't talked about and their role is Eric Spoelstra, the guy that's actually in the trenches with Jimmy Butler every day. Because I think there is something to that. Now, you could say that Spoelstra is an extension of Riley, which very well could be. That Spo is a Riley disciple and always has been. His style is very much like Riley. How he is able to communicate and coach his players and sort of the tough, hard-nosed, no-nonsense approach that he takes can be a bit grating. And I know Gilbert Arenas thought this as well, that, we keep saying it's Riley, it's Riley. It's Spo. Spo was the one that started Haywood Highsmith over Jimmy Butler. So you wonder
But you
if
don't
that
think it's at
is
the
now,
behest of Pat Riley, though?
that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here
Okay,
because
all right, all right, all right.
Arenas gave me something to think about. And I was like, is Spo playing a part in this, or is he just an extension of Riley? And Riley is the one actually pulling the strings from upstairs. I think the safe bet would be that. However, the point is the same. Butler's got to get out of there at this point. Too much has happened. And it's going to continue to be a distraction. Even if this season is lost, Chaz, you're going to have to trade this guy. You just have to. Even if the haul is not what it should be or needs to be, it'll still be good enough than having him there, distraught, angry, a distraction. And if you're going to have any hope at salvaging this season and making a run into the playoffs, I mean, I don't think they go further than the first round, to be quite honest, with or without Butler. You got to do it. And the thing is, Phoenix, if you're going to make that move to Phoenix, you got to bring in a third team because Miami is not going to want to take on Bradley Beal's contract. That has 2.5 expensive years left on it. Beal's contract now, by the way, is Russell Westbrook 2-3 years ago. Remember the end of Russ's contract, how expensive those years were?
It was an albatross of a contract, man.
Exactly. That Russell.
How much? 2 years, 100 and how much?
I just know he's got a $55 million option for 2027.
I think it's 110. 2 years, 110.
You'd have to pay him the rest of this year, next year, and he's got a player option for 27, a fifth-year player option, and he's going to opt into that. And even then, it's an expiring contract, but that's not going to be easy to move. So the team that is interested in Beal is Milwaukee. So you would have to try to rope them in somehow. And maybe Miami ends up with a decent player like Chris Middleton. I think that has to be the dynamic. Butler, Beal, Middleton has got to be the core of that trade. And I think everybody gets something that they want. Beal ends up in Milwaukee. I don't know why Milwaukee wants him, but they want him.
Scoring. They need more scoring.
Right. They do, but albatross of a contract, that puts them in a worse position.
They're already a second apron team. So
I understand that, but now you've got 3 max players, and you probably have to move something else too, like a Bobby Portis or a Brook Lopez. Butler goes to Phoenix, and Middleton is a solid piece and is a Diet Coke version of Jimmy Butler, at least offensively speaking. So I know Milwaukee and Miami wouldn't want to deal with one another because they're playoff rivals, Eastern Conference rivals, whatever. But this might be business. Yeah, it is. And this might be the best move for all three teams. I mean, what do you think? Am I reaching with that?
No, I mean that is. I mean, if the math works, I haven't thrown it through a trade machine yet, but if everybody gets what they want, but you just don't know what each team wants. If they value assets, if they value players, if they value space, if they value picks, like what is it? We're not going to know as the general public, or even if we're reporters for that matter,
And Beal could
because
slide into
teams
that
won't let
starting
you
lineup
know.
easier. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was
He could.
just thinking
He,
about this.
he
Beal could slide into the starting lineup, whereas I said this before, it just doesn't work in Phoenix because Devin Booker is also a two guard, right? Beal is a ball dominant two guard, and Booker is a ball dominant two guard. It doesn't work. Now, Dame is a ball dominant one, but I think he could also work with the guy like Beal because he had success with a guy
yeah.
like CJ McCollum all those years. And if anyone can figure that out, it's Doc Rivers and his coaching staff.
Yeah, I think it's really just defensively, and also I don't think Coach Butt.
Oh, no doubt. He's horrible
But
defensively.
I don't think it's Coach. Like, I don't think it's coaching in terms of Coach Butt. Coach Butt is a good coach, but I don't know if he has the right schemes for what the personnel is on the Phoenix Suns. I think another coach could possibly do something with that roster, but it's you got to work with what you have. So um, I don't know. It's really going to be interesting. I don't know who he's going to play for, but Jimmy Butler is not going to be in Miami by next Thursday, which is the trade deadline. He has to go to
And
another
Golden's,
team. I don't know
yeah.
what team that is. I can't tell you what kind of deal it's going to be. My guess is probably it is Phoenix some way, somehow. But Jimmy Butler cannot be on the Miami Heat moving forward any further. Um,
Watch out for Philly. Watch out for Philly. Watch out for Golden State. And I would even say there's always that mystery team out there that we don't see coming. And I just don't know. I told you a few weeks back it could be Oklahoma City. I don't think it will be Oklahoma City, but it could be Oklahoma City.
Shit, it could be the
It's
Spurs,
risky,
like
but
for all we know. But we're like, I mean, it
yeah,
doesn't make any
maybe.
sense. But I
I
mean,
like my Oklahoma City
I
theory,
do too, but it's
but
going to
yeah.
be wherever he wants to sign, or wherever he thinks he already has an extension, and that being Jimmy Butler. Um,
Sure.
Another team that needs to make a trade is the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, here's the thing about my Lakers:
Oh, man.
they they're not as bad as it feels like they are because they're just inconsistent. But it's a good sign because coaching in JJ Redick has made them infinitely. I mean, they're like 4 or 5 games better, but it doesn't feel like they should be because they're not as consistent. Now, the fact that they're better with a worse roster, in my opinion, speaks to the coaching job that JJ Redick is doing. But AD is going to be out for the next week with an ab injury, I believe, lower ab injury.
Abdominal strain. Yeah.
Look,
Suffered yesterday against the Sixers.
look, I've never had that, but I'm not going to be one to be like, oh, where is he at? He's only missed 7% of his games last 2 seasons. I'm good with AD.
Yeah, he's been good.
Um,
He's been good.
the Lakers need to make a trade, but it doesn't have to be a star trade. But I will say this: I know the Lakers are not on De'Aaron Fox's list. They have Rob Pelinka has a chance to right the wrong that he made when he decided to pass on Fox for Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball has not had the career that any of us thought that he was going to have, by no fault of his own, um, just fate. But De'Aaron Fox has, and he is ready to step in, and he's ready to win now, like I've said. And I'm just saying this: I don't know if the Lakers are even interested in De'Aaron Fox. They should be, but Rob Pelinka could right the wrong that he had by passing on him. This is why you save the 3 picks. This is why you don't want to give it up for any marginal player. This is why you want to hold on to every asset that you can, because when a player like this comes available, you want to be able to pull the trigger. And I do think that if they were to pull the trigger, it would make the team infinitely better. Rob Pelinka could tell the Kings, you could have whoever you want except for LeBron, AD, and Dalton Connect. Reeves, picks, swaps, Christie, whoever you want, as long as it's not Bron, AD, or Connect, and Bronny James, of course. But you can have whatever you want, whatever combination. What
Oh,
Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, pick any three players and three assets, and they're yours for De'Aaron Fox. That's how much I believe in this guy. But it's probably not going to happen.
yeah.
He's probably going to go to San Antonio since there's so much smoke there. There has to be some version of fire.
But
But
they could put together a more attractive package as
of
well,
course,
where the Kings could accelerate their rebuild, and not
I
even
don't know
really a
that
rebuild. It
exactly.
would sort of be,
I don't know.
yeah.
But based the Lakers picks
But the Lakers picks are not going to amount to much because the Lakers are going to continue to be a
unprotected.
playoff
You don't
caliber
think
team.
so?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I don't think they're going to land De'Aaron Fox between now and Thursday. Next Thursday, I mean, the February 6th. Okay, so Fox is not coming to the Lakers this year. May not go to the Lakers during the offseason either, but we'll wait and see. Now, they need a front court piece. That's been their problem all year long. That was their problem last year. That's their problem this year. Anthony Davis went on SportsCenter with Shams Charania and basically told him, another big. I want to move to the 4. He referenced the 2020 team with JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Why? Because they played center 75 to 80% of the time. And the only time Anthony Davis was playing center was at the end of games for the most part. And even then, sometimes we saw Dwight or McGee if they were having a good game or the matchups were more favorable. He wants to play center. Alvin Gentry said this about him when he was playing in New Orleans. And you've got 5 names that more than likely are available. It doesn't mean they're going to get traded, but it means that their respective teams are going to listen to offers. Nikola Vucevic, Chicago Bulls. Walker Kessler, Utah Jazz. Jonas Valanciunas, Washington Wizards. Jakob Poeltl, Toronto Raptors. And the prize of the trade deadline. And the guy that has been linked to the Lakers since for the last 4 or 5 years, it feels like, Miles Turner of the Indiana Pacers. Now, here's my problem with Turner, and this is based on the reporting of Anthony Irwin of Clutch Points. Turner is in a contract year, meaning he is a free agent after this season ends. Indiana is currently in the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. So you got 2 problems there. One, Indiana may not want to deal him because they're in the heart of the Eastern Conference race, and I don't think they're going to fall off precipitously over the next week to the point where they're automatically going to become sellers, even if Turner's in a walk year, which also means he could leave Indiana at the end of the season. But from what I was reading, the asking price is still going to be both first-round picks. And I think Indy, given the demand out there, they're still going to try to – Kevin Pritchard, I believe, is their president of operations over there, is still going to try to squeeze the Lakers out of both picks.
It's been years, Chris.
Now, I understand that. Let me just say this. I understand the allure of Miles Turner. He's a shot-blocking, rebounding big. He could run the floor. He's got an element of athleticism to him. You put him next to Anthony Davis, it would be a dynamic duo. He could knock down the 3 ball, but that's giving up an awful lot for a guy who could end up saying toodles at this summer.
Did you say 2 picks?
The guy, I think, from what I read in this article, I agree with you. It doesn't make sense, but that is apparently what they would ask for. Now, Chicago is asking for a first rounder for Nikola Vucevic. Now, Vucevic is not the defensive player of Miles Turner. He doesn't run the floor like Miles Turner, but this is a 20 and 10 guy in his sleep who could post up, knock down the mid-range jumper, knock down the 3 ball, and operate the offense from the pinch post extended. So you could actually run some offense through him a la Marc Gasol in 2021, right? 1 year left on his contract. So you would have him for the rest of this year and next year. They would probably be more willing to take on a guy like Rui Hachimura and JHS, 1 first rounder, maybe a second, and they're also willing to throw in a guy like Torrey Craig, a solid 3-and-D perimeter defender. You can never have enough of those guys in the West.
Hasn't played in weeks.
What?
I got you, but hasn't played in weeks.
Okay, whatever. But I'm saying you could either get him, maybe a Lonzo Ball reunion. Lonzo's looked good since he come back. The guy I want, and I'd be willing to throw in both first-round picks for this guy would be Kobe White. Kobe White is a baller, man. He's been outstanding this year. So if you could get Vucevic and White, two guys who are under contract for the next few years, I'd be willing to give up both firsts, as well as Rui and JHS and whoever else to make that deal happen.
I'd rather give up.
That's me. That doesn't need to be you, but go ahead.
I'd rather give up 3 picks for Fox than 2 picks for Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic. That's just me. But it depends on what's available.
Well, hold on. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I'd rather I'd rather give up 3 picks for De'Aaron Fox than 2 picks for Vucevic and Kobe White. I don't know what's available, and I don't know what's there and what's on the board and what's not on the board for Rob Pelinka and what he can pull the trigger on and what he can't. But ultimately, he needs to make a move, and no matter how it gets done, he needs to get one of those 4 guys like you just mentioned: Miles Turner, Jakob Poeltl, Jonas Valanciunas, or Walker Kessler. I don't care what the price is.
Yeah,
figure it out. You can get one of those 4 guys without depleting all of your assets and making AD at least happy, because he's busting his ass and taking the wind out of his sail, because he was on pace for MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, right? But he doesn't have the backup to be able to play the way that he needs to play. So we'll get off the Lakers. I'll get off my soapbox. We'll talk a little bit.
Well, hold on. No. We got a couple questions. Let's humor our audience a little bit. Right. I got one from my bro John. Questions. Comments. Well, first of all, he said, there you go, Chaz. I think he liked your last point on that. He also agrees with you on Fox. He also says Turner does nothing, and he doesn't think the Lakers should go after Lonzo Ball if they deal with Chicago. Okay, so not really a question, just comments on that, but he seemed to like your theory on that. Your guy, Marcus Garcia Draper, said, do you think they trade Anthony Davis or bring in help? Go ahead, bro.
They definitely are bringing in help. AD isn't going anywhere. AD is going to get his number retired when all is said and done with Lakers.
Okay. If you guys have any other questions or comments, drop them. Chaz and I will get to them as we can.
Can the church say amen one time? Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Houston, we have no problems. They have no problems in Houston, Chris, because they're 32-14. Amen Thompson is balling on Jaylen Brown, hitting step back game winners. Chris, they were just playing great basketball. I can't win a bet to save my life when I put money on them to cover a spread. They can never cover a spread when I need them to, but they're 32-14 straight up this year. And the Houston Rockets are in the 2 seed, I believe, in the West, right behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, even a notch above Memphis and Denver and my Lakers. So, Chris, what do you make of Houston? Is this sustainable? Are they buyers at the trade deadline? Do they want to go and get somebody to just bolster up their roster, being that they might be ahead of schedule? And they're doing all of this without Jabari. So one of their top picks from a few years ago. I'm loving the way Tari Eason is playing. What do you make of the Houston Rockets, man?
Well, these are their last 4 wins. Just hear this out. Against Cleveland at home, at Cleveland, at Boston, and at Atlanta. I mean, those are the last 4 games.
I cannot believe they beat Cleveland twice.
At Denver, they beat them by 20 in Mile High City, by the way. Not a tough place to play, not an easy place to play. And then they beat the Memphis Grizzlies twice. That's just in this month alone. And, of course, they also beat the Lakers to lead off the month. They have just been rolling. They have been rolling, and this is the Ime Udoka special. Go back 3 years ago, Chaz. When did the Boston Celtics take off? It was January. They were a 500, slightly above 500 team, and then boom, Celtics take off. They make a run into the NBA Finals. Eventually, they lose to the Golden State Warriors. This is what Ime Udoka does. And I understand he got hit with the scandal at the end of his time with Boston. Actually, not really at the end of his time, at the beginning of his time. And they were forced to get rid of him, begrudgingly, I'm sure. But the question was never about his coaching skills. And he went to the right team at the right time. They have got a really good young nucleus. I'm glad they kept Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün. Jabari Smith, like you said, is out right now. They added good vets with Dylan Brooks, and who brings the toughness, kind of that Ron Artest type thing. He's annoying. I like to call him Dylan Bricks because of all this stuff you put the Lakers through a couple years ago. But he brings an element to this team. Fred VanVleet brings an element to this team. And you just see the buy-in from there. Tari Eason, Jay Sean Tate, the guy Christopher, Steven Adams is finally healthy. I mean, they are just playing really
They
good
got a
ball.
good roster.
And Amon Thompson, fantastic. Fantastic. And they had the number 3 pick this last year, Reed Shepard. He hasn't even played. He could end up being, a solid piece in the next couple of years. The Rockets at this point have got the best of it. The question that they have to ask themselves, and this is the same question Oklahoma City has to ask themselves, do we believe that this young core can go far like the 2010 Thunder with, Durant, Westbrook, and Harden when they were young, or the Golden State Warriors sticking with the Splash Brothers and Draymond and those guys? Or do they feel like, you know what, let's trade a couple of these young pieces, throw ourselves in the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes or one of these other guys that might be traded and really make a push this year to try to get over the hump and get out of the Western Conference? That's going to be the big question with the Rockets. But either way, I like what I'm seeing. They're fun to watch.
I think the answer to that question is going to be no, because I think that they still lose random games, like bad losses, like to
They lost
Chicago
to
at home,
Detroit.
or yeah, Detroit, at home as well. Like just, teams that are better. Like it was almost like they were worse than expected last year and better than expected this year. So it's like they're
Yeah.
in this weird range, but I think ultimately that they're not going to make any drastic big moves. I think they're going to go with what they have mostly. Um, I think they're going to be probably a second round exit team this year, more than likely. If they go any further than that, I'm truly shocked. But I'm liking what I'm seeing in Houston, and I think coaching more than anything has everything to do, and veteran play has everything to do with who they are and the development of Jalen Green. Jalen Green is their best player.
Yeah.
Jalen Green is Houston's best player, even though they got Jabari Smith and Tari Eason and Dylan Brooks and Van Vliet and yada yada yada. All these players, Jalen Green is that guy. So that's who they need to build around,
Oh, he's a
and
baller.
that's the guy.
I agree with my brother. He's saying Houston needs Herter, Royce O'Neal, Bruce Brown. I think, well, he says Bruce Bowen. I think he meant to say Bruce Brown or like a Jeremy Grant. I think I understand what he's saying. If they're going to make a big splash, it doesn't need to be necessarily for a star. It needs to be for a veteran who could shore up their bench, maybe another perimeter defender, Chaz. A guy who's kind of been there, done that. I think a Bruce Brown would be a good fit. I think, there was a rumor that they might be interested in Robert Williams III. The problem I have with them getting Jeremy Grant is Grant might be more expensive, and he still has multiple years left on his contract that are kind of expensive. I just don't know if they're going to go down that route, or even like a Zach LaVine. Yeah, I think a smaller move would be key for them. To really shore up that perimeter defense, give another defender alongside Dylan Brooks. Like a Bruce Brown would be an amazing fit for them. If they could somehow land him either via trade or buyout market, that would be really good for the Rockets. That would be a really nice fit for them.
Where's the Lakers would get Bruce Brown? Come on. Hey, what do you know? We'll see. One week, February 7th at noon Pacific, I believe, right?
February 6th, next Thursday.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's enough basketball for the night. Let's get into a little bit of football, Chris, because the Super Bowl 59 is set, and you got the Eagles, you got the Chiefs, you got the Chiefs coming off another thriller against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills at home in Arrowhead, and you got the Eagles, Saquon just busting out big time runs, 60-yard touchdowns, knocking the cover off the baseball, if you will, by just running on teams over and over and over again. Did it to my Rams, did it to the Washington Commanders, probably going to do it to the Chiefs, but will it be enough to knock off the two-time reigning defending champion Kansas City Chiefs? Chris, will the Eagles fly high or the Chiefs three-peat? What do you got, man?
Man, second meeting in 3 years. We haven't really had one of those in a long time where two teams face off against one another for the second time in 3 years. So shout out to the Eagles because Chaz, I remember last year how things ended. It was ugly. I remember they got their brains beat in Tampa Bay. I remember Baker Mayfield just ran through that defense like it was nobody's business. And there was a lot of talk coming into this year. Is Sirianni on the hot seat? What's going to go on with Jalen Hurts? What are they going to do? And I think Saquon Barkley, all due respect, was sort of an afterthought in a way. I think people thought, okay, he might have a good year, but those last years in New York were just terrible because the team was bad. He was hurt a lot. They were unwilling to pay his quote at $12 million. And so all of a sudden he goes to Philadelphia and basically sticks it to the Giants. And not only is he going to the Super Bowl, he is a big reason why the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. He is electric, man. He is electric.
He might have been the MVP had he broke the record. Had
Exactly.
they let him break the record?
For sure. I mean, I still think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are one of them is probably going to end up winning it. Shout out to both of them. Had very good seasons. We'll get to the Bills and the Chiefs in a sec. I'm just saying that those were the names in the mix. This game is going to come down to which quarterback can make the big plays with their legs. I think that's really what it's going to come down to, because at some point, Vic Fangio is going to take away something from the Chiefs. He's going to take away Worthy or Hunt or, Pacheco or one of those guys, Travis Kelce. He's going to find something. He's going to force Mahomes to do something great and maybe give Mahomes something he's not ready for. And I think Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator of the Chiefs, is going to do something where he's going to force Jalen Hurts to beat him with his athleticism and his legs and test out that sort of that bad ankle injury he suffered against the Rams. By the way, he looked fantastic last week against the Commanders. Or he's going to force him to throw some deep balls to Smith and Brown. That's where it's going to come down to. Barkley has got to set the tone early, similar to what he did in the NFC. He has got to force that adjustment sooner, so that way it opens things up for Brown and Devontae Smith. But it's going to be a hell of a game, man. And it's going to come down to some really good coaching from both sides. So congrats to both teams getting there. Chiefs are looking for the three-peat. Eagles got to do something. Similar to how they beat the Patriots 5 years ago in the Super Bowl, they gave Belichick and that crew something they weren't ready for, and that was the difference in the game. And Sirianni and Fangio and Kellen Moore got to do the same thing.
Do you know that Vic Fangio defenses are 0-10 against Patrick Mahomes in the last 10 times that Vic Fangio defenses have faced him?
That is
especially in the playoffs.
That is an ugly stat right there. That just means to me they're due, baby. They are due. They are due.
Did you know that Patrick Mahomes is 15-0 in true dome games? Meaning just a straight dome. No weather elements.
Yeah.
This will be in a straight dome.
Yeah.
And last but not least, did you know that Andy Reid, coming off of more than a week to prepare, is, I believe, 8-1 in those games. 8-2, I believe. Sorry, because he lost 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, he did. Both to Tom Brady. One with the Patriots when he was with the Eagles, and one with the once against the Bucs.
So,
yeah,
I say all that to say, put your money on the Chiefs. I'll segue this into get picks or die trying into that segment as well, because we'll just incorporate that into the Super Bowl, because the pick has to be the Chiefs. Now, I'm nervous. I'm nervous as hell about it because the Eagles are the better team. The Eagles are the better team. They should win. They should be favored. The only reason why they're not is because of one player and one player only, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And that's because of the 2 stats that I gave you: 15-0 in straight up dome games. And I'll give you another stat. I believe from what I read earlier, he's something like 8-2 or 10-2 in games where the spread is between 0 and 3. So if he's an underdog, or he's getting points, but it's less than 3 points, if it's between 0 and 3 each way, he's almost unbeatable in those scenarios as well. So you gotta, like, even if you lose money on the Chiefs, it makes sense because it's just the right pick, because they haven't lost. They keep winning these close games, and I think it's going to be a hell of a game.
Season. It's been the story of
the season. And if they lose a close game in the most important game that they probably have ever played, this is going to be the most important game they probably ever played this long into the dynasty, because it is a dynasty, going for your 4th Super Bowl and 7 AFC championships championship games, and you've been to what, 6 Super Bowls now? This would be the sixth. Because
I
you've been
think
no,
this
I'm sorry,
no.
five,
Yeah, 5. This is the 5th.
five,
Mhm.
five.
They're 3-1.
So
They're 3-1 right now. Yeah.
so I mean, it's got to be the Chiefs, but I think it's going to be a hell of a game.
It's
But
going to be fun.
That Vic Fangio defense is against Patrick Mahomes that is the most glaring to me. And not only am I putting money on the Chiefs, I'm putting money on Patrick Mahomes not even to throw an interception in this game. I
Well,
think
here
I think he I think he's going to carve up that secondary because they're not going to put a spy on him because they're going to have to account for so many different players. And Mahomes is he's not hurt, so he's going to be able to be mobile. And Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to have a great game as well. I think it's going to be a duel of two great athletic black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. It's going to be a great game.
it really is. And that was obviously well put. And, it's also one of those things where sometimes you get tired of seeing the same team. We saw it with Golden State, right? A lot of people were fed up with them winning. A lot of people were comparing it to the 90s Bulls, right? Where it's like, oh, how could you root against Jordan in the 90s Bulls? Bro, I know plenty of people who did not want to see the 90s Bulls, finish off that three-peat. You know why? Because I was one of them. When I was growing up watching basketball and stuff like that, year in, year out, seeing the Bulls dominate and stuff like that, it may have been fun to watch Jordan and Pippen do their thing. And obviously I respect the dynasty because it is very difficult to do. And not just for them, but the Showtime Lakers, the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, the Spurs and what they did for a long time. The Yankees in the late 90s. You got to respect greatness. But we as fans, we like underdogs. We like to see upsets at times, and I think there's also an element of, and this hits a little bit closer to home for the same reason why Laker fans rooted for LeBron for so long. I think people feel threatened when their star player, who they are so adamant and passionate about, their legacy starts to get threatened a little bit. That, to me, I think factors into it. And I think the people that hate Mahomes might be the same ones who love Tom Brady or not, but they also don't want to see Mahomes surpass the legacy of Tom Brady. I think that
That's
plays a factor into it. You know what I mean?
that's definitely a good point. Definitely
Right.
probably the case.
And going back to Jordan, I this wasn't as intense, but I think there was an element, I'm sure, of Laker fans. Go back to 91 in that finals. There had to have been an element of Laker fans who did not want to see Michael Jordan take down Magic Johnson and really start to threaten his legacy. You know what I mean? There had to have been an element of that. So I think both things factor into it. That being said, like him or hate him, it's going to be a great game. You got to respect what Andy Reid and Mahomes have done. And I think what's so impressive about this year with the Chiefs, they've done a lot with less. They lost Rashee Rice in week 2 against the Chargers.
Yeah.
Mahomes rolls into them. They didn't have Hollywood Brown for 10, 11 weeks this season. They bring up D-Hop off the street to try to see whatever's left. Kelsey was having a bad year. And yet
But
they went 15-2 and are back in the freaking Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? These are supposed to be
yeah,
bridge years, Chaz, and they're not.
but I gotta. Something's telling me that the Eagles are gonna have a great game some way somehow.
I
But
hope so.
you got to go with the Chiefs. You got to go with the Chiefs. So we'll leave it at that. We'll talk a little bit more, or a lot of it more, I should say, about the Super Bowl next week. Next week is media week for the Super Bowl. So we'll get into that along with trade deadline stuff because we'll be getting into it'll be the night before the trade deadline. So we'll get into that obviously even more. And we'll see who has played pretty good games over the course of the next week as well. But appreciate you guys tapping in with us every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Chris and I know we've had a few missed shows because of these fires, obviously acts of God. So um, even though some believe that it is arson, it might be a little bit of both as well. Um, but prayers up for anybody that's affected by those. And we'll see you guys next week. Chris, where can they get at us, man? Where can they follow you?
Always follow us at The Outlet Forum on Instagram, on X or Twitter, on YouTube. And you could also follow me at Chris_Camello on at Chris_Camello on Twitter, Instagram. C Camelo One, Facebook, Chris Camelo, Chaez, where can they follow you? And before you do that, or after you do that, I got something else I wanted to say real quick before we wrap up.
You guys know where to get at me at Chaz Pearson on Instagram and Twitter. Go ahead, Chris.
By the way, shout out to the Los Angeles Dodgers. $100 million from the Dodgers and the Dodgers Foundation in fire relief, and they are going to try to rebuild some of the homes that were burnt down. So that organization remains first class all the way. Shout out Shohei Ohtani. I know he made a large, sizable donation as well to the fire relief. So, this Dodger team, Chaez, continues to do great things. And also, one more time, RIP to the great Bob Uecker. Legendary baseball broadcaster, passed away last week at the age of 92. He was known as Mr. Baseball. If you didn't know him from his broadcasting, because he did a lot of his games with the Milwaukee Brewers, he was on the show Mr. Belvedere. He did Miller Lite commercials or Coors commercials.
He did it all.
He did it all, and of course,
one of the funniest baseball players of all time.
Yes, and he also did play baseball for a little bit, but I think Chaez and I remember him most from his iconic role as Harry Doyle, the radio voice of the Cleveland Indians in Major League 1, 2, and 3. And I mean, just so many great lines. I said one earlier, just a bit outside. He tried to corner and miss, and that'll be all. You could close the book on Kellner. Thank God. And of course, another one of my favorites. The Indians got one run on, one hit. That's all we got. One goddamn hit. Hey, you can't say goddamn on the air. Don't worry. Nobody's listening anyway. Chaez, Bob Uecker, man. Come on.
Thank God. love that. Love that, man. Good stuff. Great tribute. He'd be proud. Shout out Bob Uecker. Until next time, we appreciate you guys tapping in. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching the Outlet Forum. Peace.